Welcome to That's So Rad podcast. I'm your host, Travis Vongsness. This is a podcast about people, their passions, their life experiences, and their stories. As writer Frederick Buechner once said, the story of any one of us is in some measure the story of us all. All of us can learn something valuable from someone else's life and their stories. Join us for another conversation where we learn, laugh, and leave, seeing our own life in new ways. What's more rad than that? Welcome to the next episode of That's So Rad podcast. I'm your host, Travis. I'm joined today by a friend but classmate from long ago at Rugby High School in our hometown of Rugby, North Dakota, the great, the legend, Isaac Schaan, joining me today. Glad to have you on the podcast, Ike.
You forgot the myth. Most of it's mythical. Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for reaching out, and excited where this conversation will go. Maybe more what we'll learn of each other, or heck, maybe more what I'll learn of myself as we go here. So
100%. So I've been kind of joking with some classmates that I've had on this. Wasn't the plan when I launched this podcast to go back to old, just even classmates and friends that I've completely lost touch with 30 years ago. But I was telling Ike when we were talking a while back, in fact, we caught up, a week or two ago, and like for a long time, it was like a long, good conversation. But it's really been magical to just connect with, old friends like you and just, again, that we've lost touch with, but to see where our lives went and then to, just kind of glean insights on life, really. And you and I have a lot in common. So we've kind of kept up a little bit loosely over the years. And we'll unveil more of what all we have in common in this conversation. For those that don't know who you are or have also lost touch with you and kind of wondering what you've been up to these last years in your life, just bring us into more of, who you are, your family, and what you do or have done.
Yeah. Grew up in North Dakota, as you said. We were high school classmates. I currently live in Fargo, North Dakota. My wife and I, we have 4 children. Oldest, kind of fully functioning adult out there. So that's good. Then maybe about 8 years ago, we decided probably we adopted 3 children. At the time, they were 12, 11, and 7. Now they're 20, 19, and 15. So 2 of those are out of the house. One's still finding her way. One just finished freshman year of college here at NDSU in Fargo. Go Bison.
Nice.
And the youngest will be a sophomore this upcoming year when school starts, and just living her best life, trying to be involved in things in school, so on and so forth. After high school, I went to college, like many of us did. Did a couple years at the University of Mary. I had to explore what college wrestling would be like. Did that. No more. Then graduated undergrad from Minnesota State University in Moorhead, Minnesota, and then went on to graduate school for physical therapy school at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. It was a great experience. From there, moved around, lived up in the Twin Cities, had an opportunity to start a physical therapy practice at a multidisciplinary clinic down in Montgomery, Alabama. So a physical therapy school classmate of mine and I elected to move down there, do that. Spare all the details, we ended up moving back up to Minnesota, both of us. At the time, I had started dating my now wife, who was living in Rochester, Minnesota. So it seemed pretty logical to move back. Worked in Twin Cities a little bit, ended up fully moving down to Rochester. then worked in Austin, Minnesota as a physical therapist. In 2013, my wife and I were married, and we moved to be closer to family. So we moved back to Fargo, North Dakota. She's originally from Castleton, just outside of Fargo, and as we said earlier, Rugby. So we went ahead and did that then, and I started kind of still in that physical therapy realm for Sanford Health through a bunch of kind of twists and turns and jumping off ledges. Later, ended up kind of finding myself in the healthcare administration workspace. So used to work kind of in a more enterprise role. Sanford Health's pretty large. Now in a market role here in Fargo. Titled wise, it would be Director of Clinical Operations. So currently I do nothing more with physical therapy per se, to some degree, I guess, but oversee about 7 to 8 medical subspecialty areas here for Sanford Health in Fargo. So happy to be here. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for that was a great flyover of where you've been and where you are now. So thanks for sharing that. So let's start where we last left off, as in a proximal space in Rugby, North Dakota. I keep saying May of '98 because that's when
That's that's
the exodus for me.
it's like the show Manifest, right? That's when
Yeah,
the gap in time existed,
that's
right?
it. That's it.
Yeah,
So let's talk a little bit about small town North Dakota, growing up together out there.
yeah.
Yeah, comes to mind.
You know, I think I'd first start off by uh, kind of stating that I didn't realize it till much later in life. I know you grew up in the country, lived on a farm. I grew up in the country, lived on the farm. Um, Obviously, we're young enough that we didn't go to country school.
Mm-hmm.
We did use paved roads and vehicles to get to town. But as I at times have reflected back on life, have really just come to appreciate the fact that I was able to be raised in a small town on a farm. And what I mean by that is until much later, and you hear other people's experiences, or maybe without being pompous, they share something they don't know how to do. And
Mm-hmm.
in your head, you kind of go like, how do you not know how to do that? And then you realize you got to experience something most of the world doesn't. Some people visit a
Sure.
farm, some people whatever, but very rarely is there an instance where somebody grew up in the city and then went and bought a farm and
Right.
farmed. It's more the other way around, that people who
Mm-hmm.
grew up in small town America, in our case, North Dakota, and then you go out and you live in metropolitan areas
Yeah.
or more urban areas or more
Yep.
populous areas. Uh, you start to realize that, wow, that was really special.
Yeah.
Um, as much as we maybe all complained about it at the time or wanted to stay in town with our bikes because there was pavement, or I remember my begging my dad for a half pipe so we could use a skateboard, not realizing that the 18 feet by 25-foot cement patch we had to put this on was nowhere near enough to get a run to go up the ramp.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
That's real. That's so
yeah,
real.
we certainly tried to be cutting edge in a place that wasn't cutting edge, right? So no, lot of fond memories growing up out on the farm. Lots of memories, with friends
Mm-hmm.
through grade school. If I focus just on the farm a little bit, I already said just how thankful I was to have had that experience, to share in that, but also the lessons it taught
Mm-hmm.
later in life about, maybe some of the more simpler ones of when it's time to work, it's time to work. And if it rains and there's no work to do, or it's winter and there's not as much work to do, so on and so forth, then you can go have fun, go play a little bit, enjoy life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a metaphor for all of us, really. When you got to dig your heels in and get your hands dirty and it's time to work, we should all step up to the plate and work, whatever that work looks like, whether
Sure.
it's project on your house, whether it's your kids, whether it's your job, staying late, going early. Maybe it's something as simple as working out.
Yeah.
But then when there's no work to be done, or it's time to shut off, or it's time to step away, I think it's important to play too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Play for me over, course of the last 30 years has certainly looked different. Play right now might look like relaxing on the couch and watching a TV series. Uh, Play 25 years ago might have been making sure I had written down the exact directions to the field where the party was going to be at, over a hill, through some trees, by two shelter belts, around a corner.
Right.
And alas, you come over the hill and
Alas.
it's the mecca of youth in rural America. So
That's right.
no, I think one thing the farm definitely taught me was that, work hard, and but it's okay to play hard a little bit too in life.
Mm-hmm.
As I fast forward, I really cherish those moments.
Hmm.
In my type of field of work, um, there's not necessarily a shut off switch, so to speak. We can talk about that field after a little while, but when it's time to step away, be at the lake or be with family and friends, especially over the last couple of years with some different things that have happened in my life, have really just learned it's okay to press the pause button and enjoy
Yeah.
it, enjoy that moment for a little
Hmm.
bit. You
That's
know,
good.
also, in that small town, we had everything, in my opinion. We grew up in a small community. But at the time, Rugby was something like the 14th largest city in the state of North Dakota.
Hmm.
Um, as well as I do, we had clothing stores and J.C. Penney catalog stores and Ben Franklin's and restaurants and bars and
Just
movie
no traffic
theaters.
lights. Just no
Yeah, no,
traffic lights and no fast food, really. Well, for reference, for people that don't know anything about the state or our town, when you say 14th biggest city, I mean 3,000 at the. I mean, I don't know then what it was.
yeah, I'm gonna
Is that
say,
ballpark?
yeah, at that time probably 3,000, 3,200. I don't know what Rugby ever peaked out at. I know it's probably somewhere around the 2,800 number now, or something
Yeah.
like that. I know class sizes have gotten smaller
Sure.
considerably.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, just for reference, I mean, that's, in some previous episodes of North Dakota is kind of a thing we talked about. I mean, it's, it's the most treeless state in the country. I mean, I knew there weren't many trees there, but I didn't know it was the most treeless. And you think of like New Mexico, places with deserts and stuff like that. What? And one of the windiest. So it's like take the trees away and then add tons of wind and no one lives there. And you have a recipe for
Yeah,
wild
with all the
field parties.
with all the wind, I'm pretty thankful I'm shaped like an Oompa Loompa. I'm pretty wide to the ground. Nothing's gonna pick me up. So, um,
That beard's gonna hold its own too there.
I put enough product in it, it won't move around. No. So, no,
Yeah.
lots. It was fun. That time, that high school time, was fun. You and I share some similar memories. Lots of football memories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were both blessed with some intellect and stuff, so we shared similar classes of things that we were able to do. I
Yeah.
know physics is one of those that we shared in common. We had some good times
Yeah.
there.
Good teacher
You
too.
know, Football, we talked a little bit about, and I was reflecting after our conversation the other day. One of my, just thinking about all the games. We were talking
Mm-hmm.
about different games or different
Yep.
memories we had, and I shared with you one of the memories I have was that individual after we bumped up classes. A wide receiver from, I believe it was Valley City. Certainly, Buddy, check me there if I'm wrong, but uh, you weren't a short high school person. I mean, you weren't 6'5" or
5'9"
anything.
maybe. So yeah,
Right. Well,
yeah,
by
10,
rural
5'10".
America standards,
Sure, yeah.
I'm 5'7.5" on a good day. The bad thing is I was 5'7.5" on a good day when I was in 8th grade.
We've not lost ground then. I mean, so that's
I've gotten
we'll
closer
take
to the
that.
ground. Parts of my body have gotten
One
definitely
of them right
closer.
here.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, so
But I
you were
remember
the
hurdling you and just like,
man.
how did that happen? Because you were almost in a full stand.
I
I
just
mean, you weren't,
whiffed.
it wasn't like a low, you had a
Okay,
good form tackle, but
yeah.
I would call you, you weren't bent down at the waist or anything. This guy just hurdled you and ran.
And you and I were talking about this too as a memory. I mean, I think kind of just talks about our state too, at least at that time in the 90s, that, at that level, I mean, I think it was the first African American player we faced and only, I mean, that maybe there could have been someone on the sideline or whatever, but it was not like that. So, and
Yeah, it
yeah,
wasn't. Yeah,
yeah,
I think it was, as you said. I think actively playing it was.
yeah.
Yeah.
So were you the outside linebacker and on defense and fullback offense? I feel like
Yeah, by the time when we were
seniors.
seniors,
Okay.
so I'd always played fullback. Prior to our senior year, I was actually a nose guard on the line. One of those beefy 145-pound nose guards. Um, and then our senior year, we had so many big guys,
Yeah.
not only in our class, but in some of the underclassmen, that it was really a shame not to have them playing. And so, yeah, moved to one of the inside linebacker positions. And I'm here to tell you the game of football moves a lot faster when you see most of the players moving versus when you see like three of them moving.
Right.
I've told different people through the time, that story. And I said, you could be successful if all you got to do is pay attention to like three people. It gets a lot harder when
Yeah.
everyone's moving in different directions and you
This is
actually
true.
see the fakes happening. And
It's a lot more going on.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I just had never played that position
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
probably since our middle school years. So
You know, it's funny the memories that come back. You've talked about we've talked some about the farm already. And I think you and I went in the same bus, didn't we? The same school bus
we
route.
did for a little while. When I was born, we lived on a farmstead. I guess that's what we would have called our farm.
Hmm.
That was about 5 miles or so away from kind of the home farmstead where my grandfather and grandmother lived.
Okay.
And then I'm going to say somewhere around the early 90s, my grandparents moved into town, and
Hmm.
then my parents bought the farmstead and moved over there. So we moved over there. So it's a long way to say I rode several different iterations of buses,
Iterations. Okay.
or bus routes, but I do know there was a time, yes, we were on together, and I believe one of the Pfeiffers or multiple of them were our bus driver at some point
Okay.
in
So,
time.
do you remember? I shared this on the episode with Tom. Were you on the bus when we had the squirt gun fight with the great Edwin Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Okay, so you remember that where he had the 5 gallon bucket and like a Super Soaker 8000 or whatever it
Yep.
was, and
He had
just
what we all
dousing.
wanted, but he was an adult and could afford it. And we were going with whatever our parents got at a garage sale somewhere.
And it's
Most of
just,
us.
oh my gosh. And I know it's another age, different age now, social media and just everyone's got smartphones, but like, I mean, the parents all knew like the driving bus driver is holding a water gun I mean, they all signed up. I mean, it was just like,
You knew that was going to happen on the last day of school. You
right.
almost anticipated it since the first day of school
Oh my
of
gosh.
how awesome the last day of school
That's
was
right.
going to
Yep.
be.
Yeah.
you
But
know, and I can put balloons here and I can go fill them in the bathroom at the school before I get on the bus. And
right.
yeah, and then
It's
you get on the bus to realize you're completely outmatched. There's an adult thinker there that has everything better than us.
right, and is driving the bus. So
Yep.
it's funny because there's stories like that that take me back to almost
Well,
thinking
we all
like,
wore seatbelt, or no, we didn't. Never
well, we
mind.
didn't, but
No,
we,
because they
well, yeah,
weren't there.
they weren't there. But it's stories like that that make me feel like it was the Wild West in a way. I mean, like it was a modern day like Wild West. I mean, what is going on in the school buses out there in
Well,
1998?
at some point you were on a school bus where some driver would have tried to go over an intersection to make the back of the bus kind of bounce, and you'd go sit in the back and go sky high. And I mean, not like you said, smartphones.
Oh man, I mean, just imagine
That
today.
driver ain't driving anymore, and
No, and
unfortunately, he's
he's
probably
yeah,
in some legal trouble. And
exactly.
um,
Oh man, but what I guess what I was going with even before that is like, and I'm sure you do too. Like you have a closer tie directly to, you live in the state still further south, Fargo, but just the snapshot, instant moment memories that take you back of like, for me it was thinking of times in the tractor, the smells of things, the wind, just the smell of planting in the dirt. I mean, those things are just like in your bones when you know what I mean? Like, does your mind go back to that sometimes? Just field work or, the stuff
oh
we, yeah.
yeah, most definitely. Sorry I cut you off.
No, you're
I
good.
believe you're going to say stuff we maybe hated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Just, I mean, I hated it. I mean, I hated it. Hours in the tractor.
My grandmother said once to someone, that Isaac, I'm pretty sure he's allergic to dirt. Um,
Well, hey,
I, wa-
if that works.
it was never in my bones at that age. Now, you and I share the similarity that we were the oldest. And so, right, wrong, or indifferent, there probably was some level of you're forced to doing this because mom and dad now had somebody who could help, right?
Yeah.
We all drove at far younger ages than
Oh,
we would want
Jesus.
our
I
own
mean, I
children
feel
to
like,
drive. I was just telling somebody the story this weekend. We were out at the lake and they're asking about, boats and different things on the lake and talking about memories. And I said, I've been driving a boat or being out on the water as long as I've had a license. Because I remember we were coming home and one of our neighbors was pulling a boat. At the time, he was a bachelor. And we were coming home from church and stopped him and kind of made a joke. He said, well, about 5 years ago, I bought a life jacket, so I thought I better buy the boat to go with it. And, my dad was chuckling and he said, plus, you're not buying your boys a boat, so I figured I better buy them something they can go skiing with. And I mean, later on, a couple of years later, we ended up with a boat. But
mm,
one of our other classmates, Jeff Dukshire,
hmm
and myself, and our younger brothers who were classmates 2 years younger than us, at the age of 14, 15, Jeff and I were loading that boat up at someone else's house, pulling it out of a garage and backing it in that probably had 8 inches on each side,
jeez.
scrounging all of our money together to put gas in it, or sometimes he'd just let us fill for free on his farm. Going down, launching this boat, skiing, barefooting, wakeboarding, tubing, kneeboarding,
Dang.
anything and everything with our little brothers, and coming home at 10 at night.
Yeah.
I can't in any way, shape, or form imagine me promoting that with one of my children when they were
Right.
14 or 15.
Yeah.
I mean, I
It's
want them to
wild to
check
think
in
about.
when they go to the grocery
Yeah,
store eight
right.
blocks
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
We didn't have
Yeah.
phones. How are
Right.
they going to know if something happened? One of us was going to have to run home.
For sure. Yeah. Well, and I go back, even to like to, the extreme temperatures. I mean, I mean, people that don't know North Dakota don't know that it also can get 100 in the summer, but in the winter, when it could get, 40 below plus, and you're out there, and this is again back in our day, pre phones, then you break down in a going home and you gotta, I had 15, 20 minute ride home, and like bad roads and stuff like that. I mean, just, how are we still here? It sounds like, man, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, if
Yeah,
you had to
you wonder
walk,
why we haven't been thinned out a little bit more.
man, I somehow we made it. But
Somehow we definitely we definitely made it. So I got to share this one with you because um, it's one, it pops in my head every year. And so I got to give a little context to it, and then I'll explain how I got here today with it. So I was, so played football,
Mm-hmm.
wrestled, loved both of them. Track was something I really wasn't able to do. The farm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, my kind of parents and I worked out a deal that I could go down skiing more often if I helped, if I was around for springs work and things
Oh,
like that. So it was certainly something I enjoyed more, and I could do a little freestyle wrestling anyway, but it would help out at track meets.
mm-hmm.
And I would help out Brian Lensmeyer, who would always usually work the high school meets. He was our wrestling coach. Still good friends, great friends with him today.
That's
We
cool.
get together, we golf, we watch some Division One wrestling, and just really enjoy conversation. But one time in particular, I was helping him, and we were marking javelin,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow I don't, you know, as time goes, the circumstances get a little fuzzy, but my memory is the round had finished, and then we had to like put those big metal stakes in the ground. You'd use a tape measure to pull it. Um, and he had called time, no more throws. It was my job to bend down and pick up these stakes, and somebody was already in process and launched their javelin, and I was bent
Dang.
down, and next thing I know, it was lights out, and I was on the ground. I was hit with the tip of the javelin, but it was, I don't want to sensationalize it, say it was the year after, but it was not too long before they required the big plastic blunt end cap
Mm-hmm.
to be put on them. And so as I was preparing for this, I was like, I wanted to find my statuettes. And
Uh-huh.
I have some fun stories of statuettes that I've had in my adult life with my folks. But I found the hat that I was wearing. If you remember, these hats we
Oh
got for
yeah.
football. So I had it on backwards, and I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but it broke
Dang, look at
the through the
that.
brim, so it hit me right on the back of the neck, just at the base of the skull.
So if
Uh,
that hat didn't even maybe do something, I mean the end of the, I mean, geez, that's like a
so
helmet
not
with
everyone
a
can walk around saying they were hit by a javelin. You
wow. And
know,
then people have been killed by those. I mean, good
yeah,
gosh, back at that. So wow, I didn't even know that happened to you. Man, that's
probably explains
crazy.
lots of the
Oh, I
next
was
thing
gonna
on
say, I'm
this,
sure
but
you've gotten hassled for that for years. That's how you are. Wow,
yeah.
what a crazy
So
deal.
that memory came to mind, and yeah, the statuettes. I was really trying to find one. We had played a game with these things forever. I would bring them to my parents' house and like stash them in their closet. Or first, it started with my wife and I. She found them. She's, "What are these?"
Yeah. Okay. So we got to context this thing. Statuettes. No one else knows what this is
I
except
know.
us.
I That's why I wanted to find one before tonight. Not
You,
I was almost late getting everything set up
because you're
because I was
digging.
like, "These have been in
You
my
mean
house for the last
it's
how
not in
many
your
years?"
mantle? What is going on? I mean, gosh. So,
So it's like a woodish, cardboardy cutout that's maybe, I don't know, 18 inches tall.
yeah, yep,
And you posed for the photo, and then it got cut out around your arms
yep,
and your legs, and then a
yep.
business would sponsor it,
That's
and
right.
they would have it in their window during the sports season or whatever for the seniors, and that was like a senior gift you got.
It's crazy. And then that this goes way back because my parents, my folks graduated in like I think 67. I got dads.
Yep.
Feet are cut off by now, but
Yep.
no, but mine are upstairs. I debuted one on I think I brought it when I talked to Tom, but so man, you couldn't find yours though. Yeah, but they're crazy. I had I think I had them in college, right? Because you know how you're like moving all the time and some
Yeah.
roommates in college in Iowa, so they're like, what are those mini me's? You I guess like it's
So my
crazy.
wife was same thing. She was like, "What?"
Yeah.
And so then we started hiding them on each other. We'd put them in each other's cars and seatbelt them in, but in the back, so you wouldn't see it till you backed out. Or we'd hang them in the closet, like under a shirt, so just the head would stick out. And I'd have it like roped over the shower, looking at her. I'm just freaky things. Well, then
What
I
else are they
started doing it.
for?
Then I started doing it with my parents. So they would come and visit, and I'd pack it in their luggage, and they'd get home. And one time I went so far, so I had the two, and I had hid one at home. They hadn't found it in a while. A few weeks had went by, and my father was very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every dollar started with a penny, type
Yeah.
mantra. And
Yeah.
so he certainly didn't want me wasting money. But one time I thought, I'm going to really, really frustrate him. So I sent my other one. I sent it to him. So I paid all the postage to have this sent to him in a box. And I put in a note like, hey, I miss my brother. Haven't seen him in a while. So then they had to go searching for that one. But my mom said the look on his face, and the first thing out of his mouth, which I was really hoping it was he paid money to ship that here.
Right. That's
And,
hilarious.
yeah.
Good
We had
money for
one
that.
time he put it in my car under the hood. He was in a panic, and I had this flat spot in that vehicle. Month went by, and he wrote me. He goes, I haven't seen that statuette. And I was like, yeah, if you got me, I don't know where it's at. He goes, well, have you checked your oil lately? I'm like, why would I have checked my oil in the last 3 weeks, Dad? Like, cars are much different now. Sure enough, opened it up. I'd been driving around for a month with this thing under the hood of my car. I'm just glad I didn't take it in for an oil change. That would have been
Oh my gosh. Some
yeah.
explaining there. What's going on? That's crazy. I mean, yeah, you think of all the stories of kids that would have had those in the random, like what they did with them, but it's like, that's a funny piece of rugby memorabilia.
My son, I ordered one his senior year, hoping it would come, but it was like this big.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is. He goes, I have a statuette like you. I'm like, no, you don't. Your statuette was fleeced.
That's hilarious. So, yeah, that's some great memory lane. So you wrestled in high school, and then in college, did you wrestle some too, or?
Just the 1 year. Yeah, at the University of Mary, and then stuck around Mary another year, and then ended up moving over to Fargo-Moorhead. Ended up getting my undergrad at Moorhead, Minnesota State University of Moorhead, before I went to grad school. And
gotcha.
So
yeah. So cauliflower ear, are there long-term side effects of that? Looks like yours have healed up nicely. Is there
I have a little bit if you get close. It's not at the time we wore a lot of headgear. There certainly were people that didn't. I didn't have it at all in high school. When I got to college, I did get it in this year, and I won't get close to the camera, but I have I suppose it's like a little rock.
Okay.
In the middle of my ear, and
after effects.
Most of the time I don't notice it.
Okay, so as we close this segment of memories down from memory lane growing up there, let's share a observation we remember of each other from back then. I will say this about you. I remember the double earrings. Okay, rocking that. So you had both. Each ear had a hoop going.
Mm-hmm.
That was dope. And then I just remember you as super driven, like just locked in. I mean, like to have fun, but man, you were dialed in. Like some people were like coasting, some people were going backwards. Man, like Schaan he was going somewhere, and you knew it. I mean, I just like that's what I remember. It was just whether it's sports or whatever it was, but I just like you were locked in. So there we go.
And probably my memory in my head is I was scattered and anxious, and what the hell am I doing next?
Right.
So funny.
That's a memory I have.
I would say for you, and you have it right now, when I think of Travis Fonksness comes to mind in high school, it's smiling and that little chuckle laugh, and just always willing to be a part of whatever conversation, even if it maybe wasn't your jam or necessarily the group you were with.
Sure.
There was always just a smile and almost like I guess we were children, but
Yeah.
like a childlike attitude of like,
Okay.
oh yeah, let's try
Yeah.
that, you know,
Yeah.
and just kind of doing that. I mean, I know before we talked about like our physics project in the
Mm-hmm.
video and, you know, just some of the banter that was on that. You guys drive around town. I think it ended up we were in one of our classmates' vans and shoved what was supposed to represent a body out the back of this van to watch it roll down the highway. I mean, speaking of things we could probably get arrested for now.
Different
Now,
era.
then the cop would have just said, you know, you probably shouldn't do it on the highway.
That's maybe not on the
You
highway, but
know,
otherwise you're good to go.
but so I would
That's
just
funny.
say always willing to be jovial and not get too serious about anything, but not in, I don't mean that in a negative way.
Yeah. No, I'm vibing that. Yeah, I'll take that. I think that's been a part of my DNA all these years still. I think just still, becoming an old man, got a little angrier edge, the kids would probably say, but still love to laugh. So yeah, that was
I didn't
cool.
have gray hair before I had children in the
Well,
house. And
okay, we gotta talk beards real quick. So every episode we gotta talk beards. Whether you have one or not, we will talk beards. You have one. This is the first time I've had a little beard envy with a guest. In fact, I do. You always yield to the bigger beard. There's sort of some beard etiquette. And actually, the time of this recording, we're in August. No Shave November is coming up for all the. And I heard a great line of people calling that Amateur Beard Month. And you and I can both agree on that. So,
so ironically, this beard started on a no shave November
it
in,
did.
it was, I think 2009.
Okay.
Um, I think. Um, and I did shave it down pretty short for our wedding.
Okay.
Um, but other than that, other than one instance, it was really short. I've come to learn that after that time that I'm not saying it's attractive now, but I do not have an attractive upper lip. I wouldn't have too much envy. Mine's like 50-yard faker beard. Like it looks really good.
No,
You can really get in there. It's a little
you,
thin. Now it's
well,
gray. And it's much longer now than it typically is because I have a hairstyle that requires regular manicuring, and so she's also done my beard, but she's been on maternity leave for
okay.
16 weeks.
Oh,
Well,
down
12
to
weeks,
the
and
down to the
then
week.
I had to cancel on her. Something else came up, and I just thought, well, I'm going to let everything grow till I see her
Dude,
next, which is this Friday.
you look like a brewmaster or someone that could. I mean, the thing is I feel like with beards, there's a cred that you can like. We have cred with welders that normally I don't think you would if and so. But unlike you, so you've basically had a beard since '09.
Yep.
Okay, so different than a lot more cred for you for just longevity. I've definitely had beards through the years, and then they get to a point where it smells like a mix of Greek yogurt and lawnmower exhaust and Cheetos, and you're just like, I think we need to start this over. So I probably need some beard manicure tips from you that we could talk about
Well,
sometime.
the quick hit of them is definitely use some beard scrub. Big fan of the oils for the skin underneath. But I in front of this American and potentially worldly audience, I also use a beard straightener every morning. That it's like a
Okay.
oversized comb. Um, One of the Robertsons started a company
Okay.
like Willie's or something. They make one, and so every morning it heats up,
There it
and
is. Okay, and then it brings
then
the
otherwise it's pretty curly right through here.
okay,
My hair,
because
and
you have kind of curly hair.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
It's a great beard. Like So
Well,
keep it growing.
it's getting better now that it's fully coming more gray. Used to be pretty streaky a few years back, but I guess I keep piling stress on, so it just keeps getting grayer.
Well, I hear you there. So,
Yeah.
well, that was fun. That was a fun journey back down memory lane and some good stories baked in. So, there's no great segue, but that doesn't matter. We another thing you and I have common. Well, here's a segue. So we have beards in common, and
That
we have
created gray hair
that created gray hair. Correct. Um,
from,
from stress and kids, maybe different versions of stress, but we'll definitely blame the kids for a big chunk of that. But here's where I'm making the connection. We also have in common adoption. It's part
yeah.
of our family's journey. So there's a little segue. So
All right.
adoption, talk some about that in your story and how that sort of came about. And
Yeah. And, maybe start at the end before I start at the
okay.
beginning. I think that's one of the things that we first connected on via social media,
Yeah.
over the years was I had noted kind of your story and that you were putting out there and just realized, there were similarities. And, before I get into it, just like beards, if you have a beard, you definitely want to comment somebody who has a fantastic beard out in public. You have no problem saying great beard.
Great beard.
Adoption, I think, is one of those things that when somebody has adopted, you
Mm-hmm.
don't you don't almost have to even know them
Mm-hmm.
to know a little bit about the maybe not their story, but a little of at least what they've went through at some point in there,
Sure.
right? At
Yep.
whether that was just a fleeting moment in an evening, whether it lasted weeks, months, years. Um, Everyone has went through that, and maybe touch on that in a bit. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
my wife and I were sitting around when we got married. She had a daughter, so we have that child who's fully participating adult in society and doing all the good things and successful. And we were sitting around and she said, have you ever thought about fostering? And I said, well, not really, but maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so long story short, we did some of that, a little respite here or there, and it was kind of um, fun. And then we ended up with more of a longer term placement foster that brother and sister that were with us a little over a year. And then as they were transitioning out, we were approached if we would consider adoption.
Mm-hmm.
Now we had been studied, did the home study and everything just in case. And so we said, I mean, we've considered it, but for the right reasons or the right circumstances. Um, and so she presented a sibling group of 3 to us that were going to be coming up for adoption. And um, I guess did a sales pitch. That sounds bad, but
Mm-hmm.
there's some of that in
Mm-hmm.
that world, right? As you know, in
Huge
your
need.
line.
So.
Um, and I remember she left that night, and I shut the door and I looked at my wife. I was like, 3? She's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, well, that was interesting. And we went to bed. Long story. A couple weeks go by. We're both kind of not sleeping one night, and I don't remember if she asked me or I asked her, but it was one of those like, "Hey, what's on your mind?" She said, I can't stop thinking about those 3 kids."
Hmm.
And I said, "Me too." Um, and so we ended up kind of going and learning more about them. Threw our name in the hat, said yes, adopted them. We had not yet met them. We'd seen a photo, and so we stood at that edge, held each other's hands, and jumped. Um, Subsequently met them. It became official in 2018. Um, so just this past spring, kind of surpassed the 7-year mark. So they were 3 siblings, girl, boy, girl, 12, 11, 7 when they moved in, and they're now 2019 and 15.
Hmm.
Um, don't hold me to my math there because I was rounding for everything, so it could have
Yeah.
got
Right.
off. And yeah, I think as you know it best, or maybe not best, but you know it as well. I should
Mm-hmm.
say that Adoption is full of a tremendous amount of stress, heartache, thinking maybe it would be some way and finding out it wasn't, wishing XYZ, so on and so forth. But at the same time, there's a lot of blessings in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, our situation, without delving too much into it, was really a situation of we felt we had the means, um, not just financially, but in our home or those sorts of things, space. We also felt we kind of had the background
Mm-hmm.
in some of our different didactic training for our jobs and our careers. Um, and so we did it. We did it not to make our family larger. We didn't do it to, um, you know, any other reason than we could.
Mm-hmm.
And we prayed about it. We discerned it. Ultimately, we both felt we were moving towards this, and so we did. And I think when people ask, what's one of the biggest things, the takeaways, and I said, you really have the opportunity to learn so much about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to grow, to expand, maybe to find what your buttons are that you didn't know you had, maybe to learn what your aspirations were that just
Mm-hmm.
didn't matter. But also in a spousal relationship, you get to learn how flexible and malleable that relationship is as you
Yeah.
navigate that. That's with any
Mm-hmm.
couple raising children, but I think when a child is adopted, um, not all children, necessarily adopted, but in the case of, they lived more of their adolescence prior to
Mm-hmm.
our family
Yep.
than they did as a part of our family, and um, you don't get to change some of those things that are woven into their DNA,
Yeah.
into the DNA, and that can be very frustrating. At the same time, if we take a step back, it can be very gratifying in that, I'm grateful for the things I was able to have in my upbringing, or when I look
Mm-hmm.
at my family of origin that we didn't have to suffer through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm grateful for those,
Yeah.
even though we weren't the perfect family and we don't have, extended family or friends that were immune to, trials or tribulations. That's not what I'm saying, but I didn't have the same upbringing as my children. And my spouse and I will reflect sometimes, um, that this is something that's inherent to them, and we can show, we can guide, we can model, but at the end of the day, they're not of our genetic makeup on either side, and so there are variations that happen that way. I mean, that's human genetics. That has nothing to do with adoption, and it's just you and I are different. At the end of the day, Travis, you and I are different. We share a lot in common, but at the end of the day, we
Mm-hmm.
are different, and you're as different to me as my children are to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Yet they're living in my house, uh,
Mm-hmm.
living in our house, I should say. They're living off our means, right? As kids should, right? We
Mm-hmm.
take care of them. But that's a psychological thing, I think, that a lot of people maybe don't think about when it comes time to adopting. Again, it's not bad. It's it's it it's been a blessing at the end of the day. I really, it has,
Hmm.
even though there's been a lot of hardship. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
experienced some of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's all really, really good words there, and insights. Yeah, it's and so I also work in the space for a national org that America's Kids Belong. Check them out. But yeah, there's a lot of advocacy and awareness around just the need for foster parents and adoption as well. I mean, it's pretty interesting. So just to kind of fill in some blanks here, just for if you're listening and you're kind of more curious about this. It's around 400,000 kids in the U.S. foster system. 60% or so are going to be on track to go home. The main goal of foster care is reunification with their biological parents, and we cheer that on. I think we're wired biologically to go home, and I think there's a lot of research that backs that up, of the, just all kinds of things you've even laid out. But out of the 400,000, about 100,000, a quarter of them are going to be eligible for adoption. And many of those are teens, sibling groups, harder to place kids. And I think what you're being real about, and great, just not holding back on, is the reality that there's like the tension of like there's this incredible need, and we want to kind of like cheer and support people to step into that need, because these kids need loving people that are going to be with them, and call family. I mean, when you look at the statistics, if you age out without a family, you're likely going to be trafficked, incarcerated, homeless, all of the above. I mean, it's brutal. You know that too. And um, but what's interesting, and you're alluding to this, is that um, I think people will even say how, if they get a really young kid, maybe, it's maybe just a little after birth, and are astounded at how, maybe their parenting didn't really, like, maybe they didn't turn out to where, when they compare to their biological kids, and they're like, but how, they were like 3 months or 5 months. But there's so much in research that shows like how trauma kind of gets in, in the brain, and physiological changes happen that even in the womb, really. So, and so I think like you're right on to say like there's stuff out of your control that even in your parenting, behaviors. Now, again, that isn't, we're not saying one size fits all, or that every kid is that. But I think you're right on the pulse to say that I think most adoptive parents, are battling some of that a lot of it's attachment, honestly, attachment stuff. Yeah. So,
Right, and it's not to say it's bad, and
right.
I got to be very mindful to make sure I'm, it's not saying my children have bad DNA.
Yeah.
It's saying that their circumstances led to
Yeah.
it, and I avoided, maybe not purposefully, but omitted the word of trauma.
Hmm.
Um, and you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of research around trauma informed therapy, trauma
Hmm.
informed care, trauma informed parenting, and all the many different things that could come with that. But, I'm convinced, we know a fraction of what it really can do to someone,
Yeah.
because not all those things, I suppose, to someone they are, but not all those things are visible, right? When you
Yeah.
talk about some of the physiologic changes, when you talk about some of the hardwiring within the brain, or, almost that Swiss cheese type
Hmm.
effect that can happen at times. And,
Yeah.
um, you talked about the statistics there. And that was one reason we chose to, here in North Dakota, it's kind of an offshoot of Catholic Charities, but it's called the Ask program,
Hmm.
Adults Adopting Special Kids, and that can be special by sibling group. It could be special by underlying circumstances, whether that be diagnoses or the circumstances surrounding how they ended up at this point.
Hmm.
Um, and that was important to us. Because it made it, how do I put it? Um, it was for the reasons we were wanting to do
Yep.
this. Now somebody listening, yourself, can go, "Oh my gosh, that's touching. That's so amazing. You did all this." Yes, but there were also things we weren't willing to do. As and being in that sphere, right? You fill out multiple questionnaires and multiple different things, and where do you feel your skill
Right.
set is, and you know there were probably more groups of children that were ruled out
Hmm.
for us and what we felt we were capable of than that were ruled in.
Sure.
And I think throughout all of it, the part that blew me away the most going through the classes, going through this. And, if somebody who's listening is inspired to dig a little further, I would encourage them, because like many things, we don't know until we know.
Mm-hmm.
And I watch so many people, and I'll just use one example, that came into adoption wanting to adopt a child
Right.
with cerebral palsy
Mm.
or with Down syndrome, or have adopted 3 children with
Mm-hmm.
cerebral palsy, because their house is outfitted for it. And
Mm-hmm.
these, and that was super inspiring to me. Like, to me, those people, they got a heart,
Yeah.
and they have dug deep into their tool chest to say, we can do this,
Yep.
and it's for the right reason, and it's to give back. And this isn't to discredit the people who have struggled, maybe having their own biological children, and that end up exploring adoption or infant births or
Mm-hmm.
overseas adoptions. I'm not trying to minimize any of that, but what you talk about with America's Kids Belong, and
Mm-hmm.
what we were and have been a part of. It's just a different journey, and I think it's important to share the good and the
Mm-hmm.
bad,
Sure.
because also what can be extremely detrimental is painting too rosy of a picture for
Yep.
someone, and they become, now all of a sudden, their children are their enemy, or their children are what kept them from doing
Mm-hmm.
something else, or they feel like they owe them because we did
Yeah.
this, like,
Right. Right.
that's a really unhealthy place to be too.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, and there's an aspect of, I've heard the saying, it's like it's irresponsible to recruit without kind of the support needed, but also to just be real too, of like,
Mm-hmm.
here's kind of what you're facing. And you get a lot of that, like you said, in the training and classes, but really it's experiential on the ground stuff. Like anything else, like I think the temptation is either I never could do that, and they're saints, right? And all those people will say, we're not, we're regular people that just had this heart that said, like you said earlier on, like, let's take the leap. And then as you go, you're going to get equipped and stuff like that. But like, if no one ever took the leap at the outset because they didn't have enough information, no one would ever step into this. So there's kind of that tension again between like, you know, uh, knowing you're not going to know everything and it's going to be an ongoing learning process, and stepping in because the needs there, those kids need families, and your heart, maybe it's something God's really placed in your heart that like, hey, I see you, and I'm here for you, and I'm here to absorb your pain.
Well, and I think what I take a lot of solace in is, you know we go for, and we'll just call it period X, a time where it's just headbutting and
Mm-hmm.
frustration, and maybe even as the adult parent, a little pity party, right? Like,
Yep.
so tired. And then there's that moment, whether that moment's an accomplishment in school,
Yeah.
whether I remember my daughter being asked to sing the national anthem, at a sporting event. And I mean, you know, she no longer got 3 words in, and I mean, I was crying, and I thought, like, hey, this is an experience she may not have had before. Or when they're out at the lake and they're swimming with friends till it's dark, and it's like they're experiencing a childhood that
Yeah.
they may not have
Yeah.
had
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And this moment, or this 10 minutes, or whatever it is, when my son walked across that graduation stage, I got in the car and cried afterwards. And it was purely just, I was so joyful that he did this,
Yeah.
that he overcame the odds. Now,
That's
don't know what the
yeah.
next 50 years bring, but we got that moment, you
Yeah.
know.
I
And I
love
think
that.
that's
Yeah.
that's what I tell, that's what drives me to stay in the game, right? To
Yeah.
stay
That's
present with them, is those moments.
Yeah, I love that, man. Just clinging to those moments and seeing. I don't know. It's like finding a way to zoom out too and go. Sometimes we get in the weeds of hard days, and it's all true, not minimizing it, but yeah,
Yep.
like what's going on here. So yeah, That's cool. That's really cool. So yeah, thanks for bringing us into kind of your adoptive journey. And um, yeah, we've adopted two in our family, and foster care has been a big part of kind of, yeah, wasn't something I had was ever on my radar.
No, I
um,
remember when my wife kind of talked about it, I was like, nah. And we may end up in a conversation of faith at some point,
yeah,
depending time here
yeah,
tonight. But um, I remember the day. I don't remember the exact date, but I remember it was six. It was like 6:30, give or take, in the evening. The news had just finished. We had finished eating, and it was probably like before the foster care stuff because I was resistant.
yep.
Um, right, I didn't want to wreck my golf game, and I remember being on the couch, went and got my comfy pants on, put the footrest up. I couldn't find anything to watch. And it was like the largest kind of voice in my head that just says, it wasn't meant to be this easy.
Hmm.
And I,
Wow.
I put the footrest down and I walked in and I said, hey, let's explore it. Right.
Man,
And,
I
I-
love
and
it.
I, and I, you know, life wasn't meant to be hard, but it also wasn't meant, I think for me, that epiphany there was, I'm not here to serve me.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I need to expand myself here a little
Yeah,
bit.
that's really good. Yeah, I work with someone and her kind of mantra is, always asking, what's your why? Go back to your why. What is the why? Why did so that's really inspiring. Real quick on mine, just to not because I have no credit for, you know, this. I mean, the entry point at least. It was like we were living in St. Louis. I don't even know if I told you this when you and I chatted before this. Really quick, but I thought we were moving to Charlotte, and I had worked in mental health and kind of did stuff, and we were going to move closer from St. Louis down to where the rest of my family down in South Carolina lives, post Jeremy's accident and all that stuff. My brother, and couldn't get a job in Charlotte. Things were like kind of going like, wow, man, I've worked at this mental health place in St. Louis forever. Aren't caseworkers a dime a dozen? And um, for the first time in my life, in my I don't know late 20s or something, I don't even know the timeline anymore. Got anxiety. Had never battled that, but I was like, I had like sleepless nights. I mean, it's like I'm like 4 months into insomnia too, which wrecks your mental health, and just like directionless. No, like what is happening? I thought all this. Jess at a home daycare that she had kind of already ended. Because I'm in faith. God's moving us down south. And I remember having a dream, and in the dream were the words like "Have faith like a child." There was imagery of children getting chased, and so anyway, faith like a child. Literally, the next morning or so, sleepless night, woke up, and my 4-year-old daughter. I just looked at her and I go, "Joey, what do you think God wants mom and dad to do with our lives?" And when you're asking your 4-year-old for career advice, life is probably not going great in that season. And she looks at me unflinchingly and she says, Dad, God wants you and mom to load up her van with kids that don't have moms and dads, bring them to her house. And instantly I was harking back to the dream. And I'm not weird about dream. Like I've never been like, oh, this dream. But like that dream clearly seemed to be a pointer. And it was a pointer to this child who had more faith than I did at age 4. And kind of was like, this is what I think God wants you to do. And like that's my entry. So like I don't take credit of, I mean, you want to talk about a humbling, you know what I mean? Like, and I also felt like maybe in God's design, what he wanted me to experience before being, I guess, um, honored or whatever to be put in that spot, like you've kind of said, was that maybe I needed to experience anxiety, experience what it's like to not know what's going to happen tomorrow. Because if you're in foster care, you don't know what's going to happen. And so maybe before I was sort of, I want to say the word allowed to do this, was entrusting me with some of that like experiential, like you're going to feel some stuff too. So
Hmm.
anyway, that's, yep. But I love what you
But
said though about that. Yeah.
I think the common thread there is, and maybe Jess would speak to it. I know my
Hmm.
wife Corey would speak to it. Is paying attention, right? As
Yeah.
you're asking for a
Yeah.
quote unquote sign, or as you're asking
Yeah.
for something, not to like. You could have easily been like, well, that's sweet, sweetie. Why don't you
Right.
go along and play with your toys? Mom and dad are going to cook breakfast here, right? But
Right.
recognizing that, wait a
Yeah.
minute, um, and that's what it was like for us too. I mean, I think if we ever get a chance to do this again sometime,
Yeah.
we could definitely talk adoption for a while because,
Yeah.
as we discerned it, there was just time and time again, much like this dream followed by
Sure.
something that referenced the
Yep.
dream.
Yep.
And it was like, we can continue to say no, or we can say yes, and one thing my parents instilled in us in a young age was truly to put your faith in God,
Yeah.
put your trust in God, um, and know that if you make prayerful, thoughtful, prudent decisions, that they may not always be the easy ones,
Right.
but
Yeah.
that when the time gets hard, um, God will be there to get you through. And you can. I don't have all the examples, but I know it's come true in my life, right? Where you think like, I don't, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to have enough money to get through the month, and then
Right.
then there's some rebate check you didn't know,
Right.
like, oh,
Right.
here's $2,000, what happened there? Or you're trying to save, or you're trying to do this and something shows up, or um we had a thing recently where vehicles, I went through a bad string of them for all the kids as vehicles. I had it all mapped out, planned, this was going to work perfect, and it was like one bad thing after another. And my wife and I were talking. I said, I don't know what to do here. Well, lo and behold, my brother called me the next day, said, hey, we were going to trade the van, but I thought maybe if your son doesn't mind driving a van, we
Wow.
could just work out something simple. I said, I was just talking to Corey last night about what were we going to
That's
do, right?
crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
But you have to humble yourself in those
Right.
moments too, right?
Yep.
Then, and
Yep.
realize like, okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
will take you up on that.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. A common thread for you and I is our Christian faith. And we really have bonded through that and in those conversations. And so you've already alluded a lot to this in your sort of life story, even around adoption. I've totally felt the same, and we both feel like God's fingerprints have been all over that stuff. So kind of, if we camp out a little bit more on that, on just faith, I would love to hear from you on just the role your faith has had in your life and how it shaped you.
Yeah, great question. And this was probably 25 years ago, an area I would have breezed over and made some very PC comment about it
Sure.
that would have fit every narrative and none all at the same time. Um, and I think like anyone, as they mature through life and have different experiences, they reflect more on it, and hopefully all of those individuals, you know, take the opportunity when it presents itself to dive deeper.
Hmm.
Um, because truly going there, can be freeing.
Yeah.
Um, but for us and my faith journey, and how it shaped my life, it really starts back as young as I can remember. We did attend the Catholic grade school in Rugby,
Hmm.
so was surrounded by that. I certainly had grandparents that were rooted in faith, and really rooted in North Dakota. I know commented on the North Dakota sign behind me, and it
The
says
vast land.
"Life in the Vast Lane." So
Love it.
um, I now have two of those photos. Quick little sidebar: when my grandfather, he had an office in his houses, and uh, a print just like this hung there. When he passed, it was in there, and people remember me always just sitting in that room looking at it. And so I was able to have that. And in the little corner, he found the road the photo was taken on in North Dakota, and has the latitude and longitude and his handwriting on this little sticky note.
That's
Fast forward
cool.
15 years, I take a job in Fargo, um, moving offices, and I look behind something, and I was like, oh, it looks like you forgot this. That's not mine. That's been here forever. And so I put it up, and it was a second print of that. I had never seen one other than my grandfather's. And so it's not the
Wow.
same print, but this says it's 686 out of 2,500. So I believe there were 2,500 different photos taken and printed, is what I understand it to be, by this photographer artist. And there are just rural scenes all over North Dakota. So how does that tie into my faith? It ties into my faith in my grandfather, much like your lineage, you know, and his family put their trust in God to live in this, as we talked earlier, this place not a lot of people live.
Yep.
And they chose to start farms or businesses. You had to have faith to do that. That faith was translated to, you know, aunts, uncles, and my parents, really on both sides. You know, my dad always said growing up, you know, phrases that stick out in my head of, you know, God has a plan. You don't always know the reason, but I assure you there's a plan. Our even journey ending up on the farm, my dad planning on going to, you know, he went to college a little bit, planning on doing something around, you know, math, finance, actuary, accounting. Um, the stars aligned and he really needed to go back and farm, but he wasn't sure, and he put it before God and he prayed. Um, and I shared this at his funeral last year that, you know, he shared with us numerous times. God said, you know, if you choose this life, it won't be easy, but I'll be right there with you. And so before I was born, my dad entrusted his and my mom's life to God. And you know, that was in the thread of everything growing up. Now we did the prayer before meals, we did the night prayers, we did the things that you're supposed to do, and it felt like the things we were supposed to do, much into my college years. And then somewhere in, you know, my mid to late 30s, you're married, we moved towns, and I remember my dad always talking about this kind of retreat thing, and you should, you know, do this retreat. I was real resistant. I was the type of kid that, and am still, so I'm the type of man that kind of need to come to it on my own. If you're forcing me to do something, it's probably the surefire way. If you remind me every day, I'm going to remember not to do
Yep.
it every day.
Right.
Uh, and that's how faith was for me. You know, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, it was brought up a lot. And then I had this moment of experiencing other same aged men, other older, you know, men too, people that had families, people that really dove deeper and into it. And I was really inspired by kind of what I thought I needed to be, this, you know, prude, if you will, or rigid. And it wasn't that at all. It was backing up and realizing, you know, we talked about childlike a little while ago. You know, it really was what, you know, the Bible says, you know, to have faith like a child, to be childlike in the eyes of God, you know, and kind of let go of those things. And so yeah, it really started to shape not only my life but both my wife and I. And then, you know, that led us to that adoption story of, you know, we were able to really lean into it. Now fast forward the next, you know, 7-8 years, since the children moved in, many opportunities to share my faith with neighbors, to share it with people walking by. Had times where I've, you know, wore a crucifix, um, you know, it's just part of my standard wardrobe. You know, my family and I, we pray in restaurants. That was something we did as a kid. And I think we're at a period of time where this kind of strange juxtaposition, meaning there are more people seeking out Christianity now, and young people, you know, really searching for answers in a Christian faith. Yet at the same time, there are people by numbers large leaving
Right.
defined religions, maybe, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
or sects of those religions. Sects. That's a word that shouldn't be repeated numerous times, I suppose. But
Sex.
yeah, my accent doesn't allow it clearly, or my fat tongue doesn't do it. But but it's because our world has become so polarized, or we've
Yep.
been led to believe we're so
Right.
polarized
Sure.
that there's many people out there searching for answers. I know we talked before that, whether you like the way our society is going or don't like it, I think one common thing we can all agree on is it's not like it was.
Mm-hmm.
And certain things we held to be true before, there's now maybe a question mark about it.
Yep.
And to me, that's sad. We lose wisdom
Mm-hmm.
when we question what truth is,
Sure.
whether that be religious or whether it just be logic, right? When we
Mm.
start to question that, we lose wisdom. Sometimes I'm afraid that I, you used to hear the phrase, "Oh, he's a wise old man," or "Boy, that's a wise old person," or "Wow, my neighbor, man, he's full of wisdom," right? And that's just not a phrase that's
You
used a
don't.
lot
Yeah.
anymore. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure you can, because
Hmm.
if you disagree, you can just go, "No, that's not accurate." Um, but it still is
Yeah.
accurate, right?
Yeah.
So faith for
That's
us, it's been a big part of our life, not just the obligatory Sunday service or those things, but just something that we take into it. Been a part of, as I'm sure you have, different retreats,
mm-hmm.
different opportunities to search your own soul, to be quiet and listen in the silence,
Hmm.
to hear that voice of God, to hear maybe a little direction,
Mm.
and really to pause before big decisions are made and not make them alone. Something
Right.
I said earlier, I realized I wasn't here to serve myself. Now I'm human. Pretty sure every week that goes by, I think of something that I want, and why
Right.
aren't my family doing it for me? Why don't they recognize this for me?
Mm.
Right? We're
Yeah.
human. But I feel I have learned enough to know, like, that's not the answer, and we are called to serve. We are called to
Hmm.
use our gifts for good, right? Not for malice. I guess I feel we're called to use our gifts to build up the body of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're all working together, it doesn't take a lot of work. But when we all feel like we're on an island out there, it takes a lot
Sure.
of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. Thank you for bringing in those perspectives on your journey and your journey, sort of embracing the faith that was much part of who you were as a kid, and kind of it's a sort of a coming back home. It kind of sounds like which is many of our stories too. Because I think I resonate a lot with that too. Of like, when it's your parents' faith, I mean, it has to become yours. There has to be something for it to become real. To where it's like, okay, this is it. This is, I need to feel this, not just. So I think their training and their being around all that is formative. But I'm like you. My parents were missionaries in Africa, I think. Well, I know, but I just remember for me, it wasn't until going through the first piece of major suffering in my life. Previously married, and uh, ex-wife just left the relationship just like that, and so that was like, whoa, picking up the pieces of a life again, and God met me in that in ways that I just can't even hardly. I mean, that's the whole podcast right there, but just showing up. And so it was like, and then it became real because it was like, okay, God is here. He's on the scene. He is changing things. He is giving me hope. You know what I mean? Not just like
Hmm.
the Sunday school, what you're supposed to say or believe. Like, it is really real. And so,
Well, and I think, if I could for 30 seconds expound on what you just said there, that Sunday school belief, right? It takes more, how do I put it? flat brimmed, beard wearing, dark glasses, nose ring, whatever. People out there talking about it, not
Yeah.
hiding behind it,
Yeah.
not whatever, to normalize it for the generations to come, or
Sure.
even our own generation that's around us, right? To just have that natural conversation in a driveway, or
Yeah.
passing by someone, or recognizing, like, oh, I see you have this symbol on your car, and I just got out,
Yeah.
where do you go to, something simple, oh, where do you go to church, right? and
Right. Right.
and it, I think the other thing to that is, it doesn't so much matter the answer on the onset of it, right? If you're of a
Yep.
different faith background, it it doesn't necessarily mean you can't have a connection or a discussion around it. You
Sure.
maybe don't agree on everything,
Hmm.
or you maybe don't, you can't understand the other person's point of view, or they can't understand theirs based on the doctrine they've
Yep.
believed in their entire life. But most people who have a little bit higher emotional intelligence can have a conversation surrounding a higher power, right?
Sure.
Um, you and I
Yeah.
believe that higher power is God. You and I
Hmm.
believe in, Jesus, etc. But,
Hmm.
we have Muslim colleagues, Muslim
Hmm. Sure.
neighbors, whatever out there. And sometimes I have some of the most engaging conversations about faith and religion with them,
Hmm.
and realize that not the core doctrine, but the
Sure.
principles that's surrounding are very similar, right?
Hmm.
There's prayer, there's
Yeah.
asking, there's knowing we're not alone, there's, like you said, putting it into a higher power and realizing it's here. Um, and so I
Hmm.
probably got a little long winded there, but the point I was trying to make is, talking about it like this and
Hmm.
normalizing it and weaving it in and pointing out how it's shaped our lives
Yeah.
is important. And I think it is well, I believe it's what other people need to hear, at least to have the thought process themselves,
Yeah.
whether they join your church or
Hmm.
this one over there. That, there could
Yeah.
be an ideal state there, but it doesn't have to limit the start of the
Yeah,
conversation.
that's a really well said. I love that. That yeah, the start of it. Yeah, however you arrive into that, let's kind of lay that down for now. You are there, so let's go with that. And
You,
yeah,
you and I walk into a bar or a restaurant looking just how we do right now. Most of that place does not probably expect us to start in prayer before a meal, or us to talk about, right? Because they have this belief in their head, to be this, you have to be this, or
hmm.
and the reality is no, you just have to be human. You just have to be real. You
Right.
just have to be
Yeah.
yourself and willing.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I love your message around that though, of just like, when you're take it outward, just be real. If like people want realness, I think that is why a lot of people are leaving the church. There's an erosion of the institution, the trust in an institution. To your point, a trust in just truth itself that can be discernible. But I think there's like, and this is the thing I think is I have compassion for, is that there's a lack of trust in just authority. I think we've had such awful, whether it's political figures or whatever, that just have eroded trust, and that probably a way big overreaction. But yeah, the younger generations are kind of like, who are you to you know what I mean? Like, who are you to tell me that? Like, what's your so yeah, I
Well,
love it.
you get a false. We all do get a bit of a false narrative. I mean, you can be on whatever side of the fence or aisle you want to be on. Any research out there, any position, we'll say
Yep.
that, whether it's
Yeah.
scientific, religious,
Right. Yeah.
whatever, you can find the opposite position,
Yeah.
right? So it's just, now there's more. There seems to be, pun intended here, more trust or faith put in the opposing or the minority
Yeah.
opposition than
Yep.
there is to the majority. And our media can do a good job of framing us down in the,
That's
the
true.
world of AI we live in. I mean,
Oh
I
my
can't tell you how
gosh.
many things in the last month I've showed my wife. Look at this. She goes, "There's no way you believe
That's
that's real."
AI.
And I'm like, "What do you mean? That shark just jumped in those boat and knocked one of them out?" And she's like, "Yeah,
And
you're
this
probably
is just
right."
the tip of the iceberg. I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
be crazy. I mean, oh my gosh,
And
AI.
the one that really gets me, when they think everything we're seeing, right? I'm part of
Yep.
they,
There's the, yeah.
that everything we see is real. Just watch the baby gifs where the babies are talking just like the
Yeah.
adult person, and they made the lips move. Now, that's maybe a far example, that, but I know full well somebody could take this voice and this right here and put it
Oh
on
yeah.
you, and no one would.
Oh, for sure. 100%. Yeah.
Make
It's
it a little
crazy.
grainy, back it
Yep.
up, turn it
Yep.
to the side.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Fooled. Yep.
Yep,
So
for
it's
sure.
crazy, crazy time we're living in. So, well, we kind of getting this conversation down in the final home stretch and making the kind of last turn around the track.
We established I never ran track though.
We did, but
Okay,
you almost
but
got
I
hit.
know
Well,
how
you
to
did
make
get
the
hit,
turn. Yeah,
but you know how to make the turn.
yeah.
Just be careful around the javelin. Um,
Good
so
advice.
yes, so a kind of a theme in this conversation with you is kind of what we've had in common through life and things, and solidarity and things. And one of them is the loss of our dad. And I just found out recently that you had lost your dad last year, and so very sorry to hear that. And then I shared with you I had lost my dad in 2022 already.
Hmm.
But it's very fresh and it probably always will be. So let's spend a little bit of time just talking about, kind of the loss of dads, um, grief and loss, kind of how you're doing with that, how we to process grief and loss. But before even any of that, I'd love for you to just share anything you can just about your dad. Sound like just an incredible guy.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the space for this. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I think not everyone out there, but certainly a large amount of people would, say they've looked up to their parents.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone's blessed with a present father or a present mother, due to some of the things we talked about earlier, but due to various circumstances. Um, I was blessed with, getting to the, my middle 40s, and I got to experience my dad. My parents were young when they had me, kind of that 21 age. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you start to think about it, when you're young, that's insanely older. And as you get
Right.
older, you realize, like, holy cow, some of the guys I'm meeting out for beers are my parents' age or older. They're not that
Sure.
much older than me.
Right.
Um, And so, young, I was resistant. Older, mid 30s, my dad became one of my best friends, and I used to just lean on him for anything. Right? He was the first call when my car didn't start, even if I likely knew the answer. It was just I wanted him to tell me the answer, so
Mm.
I knew that I had learned something, and I could
Mm.
explain to him that I learned something. Right? I think most children want their parents to be proud of them. Um, it
Mm.
sounds selfish, but it's like, for me, the wanting to be proud of was making sure they knew what they poured into me was not wasted.
Yeah.
Right. And for my dad, he was humble. He was very proud. He never purchased a soda ever once from a vending machine or a convenience store. He was very frugal, um, sometimes to a fault. He was by no means a perfect man or a perfect human,
Mm-hmm.
but he did a lot of the things right. He knew he needed to eat healthy, and so whatever that meant in periods of time, fruits, different things. He was also somebody that I would say he just knew, and I don't know how he knew. Like, I never heard him once talk about, well, we mentioned politics a little bit before.
Mm-hmm.
He would never get too into that, but when it came down to it, he knew all the stances on issues and what the different sides were, and it's like, I never saw him read. I never saw him watch the news. He rarely watched TV. Like, how did he know all of this?
Huh.
Now, fast forward to last year, and last year I lost my father was diagnosed with cancer on January 25th, and my father-in-law died January
Yeah,
26th.
your father-in-law as well.
It was about 12 hours from one to the next, and then my father died August 2nd of last year. So his cancer journey was very short, full of some suffering, but I got to watch a man suffer how we should all suffer, meaning
Hmm.
when people were present, he smiled and welcomed them into the home. He didn't shy them away. He didn't tell my mom, tell him to go away.
Mm.
He was welcomed by it. The insane amount of cards and things that we got from people and the stories they're shared of things that I never knew he did. My mom
Hmm.
never knew some of the things he did, whether it was stopping by somebody's house to pray with them after they got some bad news on something, stopping by somebody's house a couple times maybe and assisting financially, assisting putting in crop, taking off crop, hauling grain. Looking back
Hmm.
on it, there were things we did for jobs or I thought were jobs, but now may have actually been helping a neighbor. And I'm not
Hmm.
certain who paid us to do that, right? That might have
Yeah,
been my
yeah.
own dad saying, well, they'll pay you this, just go over and help them.
Yeah.
At his funeral, and the night before, over 700 people packed
Jeez.
in. And it was just what I reflect 1 year later is it was such a blessing to know him.
Hmm.
As much as some of the things I disliked in the moment, I'm extremely thankful for being raised by he and my mother who is still alive. But
Hmm.
this last year was hard for us.
Yeah.
Somebody I no longer have that call. I no
Hmm.
longer have that. Why do the cows do this in the field when I'm driving
Right.
by, or this tree I'm looking at? Like he was an arborist or something. But he knew. Somebody shared with me, when you lose a parent, and I would maybe take it one step further as a man, when you lose your father and
Hmm.
there was not a tumultuous relationship, you have a hole.
Yeah.
And I've been told that hole will never go away.
Hmm.
Um, and I would say 1 year in, that hole is very much there. Maybe the
Hmm.
edges get a little softer, but I think I
Hmm.
shared with you before, and um, these weren't my necessary words, but I had this thought one time while I was explaining it to somebody, and you know, I think that hole's always going to be there, and we just have to learn to dance around that hole. We
Oh,
have to
that's
learn how to
good.
stand at the edge, look into it, remember the memories. Sadness is a memory, right? We cry, we're sad because we loved so much. It hurts
Right.
so much because we loved so much,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can tie that to faith, right? God the Father, God the Son, Jesus, like that hurt so much because they poured each other into each other. And
Hmm.
I tell my mom that, I tell different people, like, the amount you loved is the amount it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And so when it hurts, just remember that that's how much you loved or were loved.
Yeah.
And
That's a great line.
I guess for me, it's helped,
Hmm.
right? I still reach for my phone, or I still have the
Hmm.
thought, hey Siri. I even did this as recently as in the last 3 months, hey Siri, call. Nope,
Yeah.
not there,
No. Yeah.
Um, and I know you had shared a little bit of that too. Your circumstances were different surrounding that and the time period that led up to that, but the sadness is there. And for
Yeah.
you, it's been 3 years. For me, it's been a year. But we would both say sometimes it feels like a decade, and sometimes it feels like last week.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Well said. And yeah. And as you and I were talking on the previous thing, is we had very opposite really experiences with losing our dads. Your dad was a very sudden, you know, and had those faculties, and all of a sudden your best friend is gone, or a good friend. And in my case, dad had dementia, and it was a long goodbye, and he had lost faculties, and he didn't even know who I was in the end, and that had been a while. So, but it's your dad, and that, like you said it well. I love what you said about the amount of sort of feelings and loss is very proportional to the love that you poured out. I really love that. And yeah, but there, like you said, grief is so strange. You know, it can be I've heard it said well that like it can first be like a intruder just breaking the door down, and you're just like, get the hell out of it, and then becomes a
Hmm.
companion on your, you know, where sort of it's a space in that hole where maybe God fills himself with grace extra. And I've just, and you'll continue to see this, and I'm sure you felt this in the last year, like the amount of times like you might go a long time without crying, or, you know, kind of, I don't know. And then all of a sudden out of the blue, and it is never anything you'd ever think. It usually is not. It's not like holding up I mean, it can be, but you know, a picture. I mean, there's something that just blindsides you. You're like, how am I crying now? You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I've done it. There were certain mannerisms that you watch somebody you model after, and I'm never going to do that. That's stupid. And fast forward 40 years and you do the same
yeah,
phrase or
for
you do the
sure.
same look or the
Right.
same noise, and you're like, this is so stupid. Tying all
Yeah.
the way back to the whole genetic
Yeah.
thing, right? Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But
it's not, but yeah, no, I miss him greatly. He was a fantastic man. Again, not perfect, but he was
mhm.
willing. You know, it ties to that faith part. He was willing to put it all on his sleeve and out in front of him and walk a different life to hopefully
Wow.
one day walk a different life. And
Yeah.
um,
Hmm.
I think it was a model for myself, my siblings, those around. You know, I could go on and on. Numerous people said how different he was, but how in the end, looking back or after numerous years, you went, hmm, maybe you're
Wow.
onto something there.
Yeah, and I mean, just like the amount of people in the community, you know, because previous episode with our classmate Tom Heilman, but that's something he even said in that conversation, and him and I were talking like because he was talking about just what it's like to live in a small town and then the community pouring in. And use your dad's example of like his life and just how like people just poured over to that, and what that must have been like for you to kind of just, even in your deep grief of loss, but just seeing, wow, he was, there are people that he touched that you had no idea. I mean, and you'll
No,
still be finding out probably.
yeah, my brother just sent a photo of a card he got from somebody who he wrote dad every week since his diagnosis. And, you know, my brother's never gotten a card or a letter from this individual, and he got one last
Wow.
Friday. And he said, I'm thinking about you and your family today, and I miss him.
Hmm.
And he was something special. And, you know, I won't share all the details, but, you know, it was inspiring. It was
Hmm.
humbling.
Yep.
You know, my mom had asked if I would get up and share some words. And I remember walking up, you know, to I guess in the Catholic Church, the ambo,
Hmm.
they call it, or,
Sure.
you know, where the
Hmm.
microphone was, and looking out and looking to my left and looking right and being like, this is what pact looks like.
Wow.
Um, and and I know there were people downstairs, there were people in the hallways, um, with the doors open so they could hear. Um, and I remember thinking, like, you did it different. There are people in this room who, on some level, maybe spited you for doing it different, yet they're here.
Hmm. Yeah.
There's something
That's
there, right? Like, and it was
right.
just, to me, it was a charge for hopefully the however many years I'm blessed on this earth going forward, that um, I need to be brave enough to live differently, even when it's uncomfortable.
Oh, that's a great line. Be
Yeah.
brave enough to live differently. I love that. Well, speaking of lines and winding this down, what kind of final two questions for you? Um, what are you most proud of in your life today? At where are we at? 45, 46, wherever you are in your
Yeah.
middle
Yeah.
age manhood.
Um, you know, most proud, that's probably a tough one to like lock into.
Hmm.
Um, I would say there's probably a general theme.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I'm I'm most proud of, you know, my 12 years of marriage,
Mm.
because anyone who's married knows that it's not easy,
Yep.
and there are ups and downs. But when we get through those tiffs or those moments where we're not agreeing, I just think like we're doing something different than the percentages out there, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And we got to keep doing this for the right reasons.
Hmm.
I'm proud of, you know, con- have definitely went, and we didn't, get into all of them, and it's not for me to share how hard or how different things are, but whether it's the adoption,
Mm-hmm.
struggles with some of that. Um, at the same time, shortly after we adopted, I switched roles for the company I work for. COVID happened, and my wife was diagnosed with cancer and going through treatment all at the same time. And I
Right.
look back after 5 years, and I'm most proud that I'm still here, that
Hmm.
I don't have a drinking habit
Yeah.
or a vice. I'm not perfect. I have
Yeah.
vices,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that I'm still here. And so I guess the underlying theme there, and I talk about it with my faith changing. What I'm most proud of is the blessings that God bestowed upon me, namely the one to keep moving forward, to take the blows, but to get back up and keep going forward.
Hmm.
You talked about it, that you recognized I was driven, and I'm thankful for those words. I'm not sure I would have felt the same then. My mom would describe me as a young child of being, very uh, not rigid, but
Mm-hmm.
Isaac's going to do this, determined,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Determined.
um,
That's a good
and
word. Yeah.
and said how hard that was as a kid, but how much it has been a blessing in my adulthood and the things I've been
Hmm.
able to achieve, by those gifts that God bestowed upon me. And so I'm most proud that I keep ticking and I keep going forward and I keep trying to find the positive in it and putting my trust, finding a deeper relationship with God is probably
Yeah.
the root of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that's good. It's good. And it all works together and builds from there. So well said. Thanks for
mhm.
sharing that. Final thing. Love to ask people because T.S. Eliot has a great line that says, "Where's the life we've lost in living?" So we can easy to reach a certain age and we've sort of just kind of go on autopilot. What keeps your inspiration spark? And you've kind of probably said some of that already in what you just said, but how would
Yeah,
you
I would
describe it?
say, to answer that specifically, um, I have shared it, but the spark gets kept by knowing that tomorrow's another day, next week's another week. My story's not over. My family's story's not over. I don't know what that means. Meaning, is that career success? Is it financial success? Is it a marriage success? Is it seeing my children? I don't know what that means, but what I do know is each day is another opportunity to do it differently.
Hmm.
May end up in the same rut the next day. That's okay because there's another day. Somebody shared
So,
a line. It's not unique to me, but I like to use it a lot, and that is the longest day of your life's only 24, or the longest or hardest or worst day of your life's only 24 hours long. That's a fact.
hmm,
Um, Tomorrow could be hard too, but you do have a chance that it could be different as well. And I really believe that.
hmm,
Work's not always easy, family's not always easy, life's sure as hell not easy all the time. But what is to break it down and say tomorrow's another day.
hmm.
Um, and so I don't know if that's inspiration, but
Yeah.
it's certainly something that keeps me moving forward and hopefully keeps me out of the um, slipping into you know really concerning mental health states or things like
Hmm.
that, because
Sure.
something you shared before too. I'm not immune to that either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Happened in my early adulthood too, where one night I just wanted to scrape the skin off my face, and I thought, "What is
Yeah.
this? What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do I
What's
feel like
going
this?"
on?
And
Yeah.
I think if everyone truly examined their life, they would have to say at some moment they have felt depressed or anxious or low
Yep.
self-esteem or whatever. And it's kind of like faith, right? It's okay
Yep.
to not be okay. Um,
Right.
and how do we get through that? So
Hmm.
tomorrow's another day. People ask how my day's going. I say I'm walking, I'm talking, taking in air, I'm hitting all the checkpoints, right? Like, I have a phrase
Yeah.
for everything, and my kids hate it. They make fun of it behind my back. Which
Pull out of
canned
the
phrase am I gonna respond to
the
something
tool
with?
belt here.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it.
So now my son starts using it with people, and then he looks at me and smiles. My other one is I'm among the upright. And so the other day I was with him, so he's like, "Hey Brian, how's it going, man?" He's like, "I'm among the upright." And he looked over at me, and I was like, "That's mine. Find your own."
That's a good
So
one too.
yeah,
That's like almost extra cliche. I love that. That's like
yeah,
a double
yeah,
dose.
yeah. So
Oh man, that was good. Man, dude, great connect on this podcast, and whoever's still listening, must have mattered because you're still hanging on. But this was a really cool conversation. So great catching up.
yeah, and I just want to say, thanks for having me. Super enjoyable, and we should do it again sometime.
We'll do it again. All
Perfect.
right. Hope you enjoyed the episode today. Check out the show notes for any links or resources shared in the episode. If you enjoy the podcast, it would be really appreciated if you'd subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with friends. May we all remember these words from writer Mary Oliver. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it.